Now let's continue with our blend modes discussion here. We're going to open up 3 images for this lesson, A, B, and C here. And what we're going to do is just kind of demonstrate where you can start to use these blend modes a little bit more creatively. So let's go to the first one here, lesson 9A. And in this example here, everything looks pretty good. If I were to pick out one thing from it, I'd say that the boats are probably just a little bit too bright. Well, if you remember when we talked about blend modes in the last lesson, what was one of the blend modes that darkened things? It was multiply. So one of the ways we can use blend modes here is by making a copy of our background layer. I'm just going to hit Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC. And that's going to make a duplicate copy. And then we'll change this layer blend mode from normal to multiply. And remember those keyboard shortcuts. You're going to hold down Option Shift on Mac or Alt Shift on the PC, and then just think of the first word, or the first letter of the blend mode, I should say, that you want to use. So I'm just going to hold Option Shift M. All right? And that changes the blend mode from normal to multiply. And then you can say, I think the boats actually look better here. I think the background's a little bit too dark, and that's where we grab our eraser tool, just hit the letter E, and we can go with it's kind of a lower opacity eraser and just start to erase that darkened area from the background here. You can get a nice mixture of the lighter parts of the original photo as well as the darker parts of the multiply layer. So take a look here. That's before, and then that's after, and I could probably stand to erase just a little bit more up top here. So let's take a look again, before and then after. So I think that's a good demonstration of one of the really simple ways where you can start using blend modes for your photography and for your digital photos, is just by some quick changes like that. Now let's go on to lesson 9B. Here we've got a pretty well exposed photo. If I were to say anything about this one, it would be that the house on the right hand side is just a little bit too dark. All right, and you don't need to take a detailed selection tool. You can get away with doing a lot of things when it comes to duplicating a layer and trying to kind of make part of one layer fit with part of another layer. So in this example, let's duplicate that layer. Again, Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC. That's going to be your keyboard shortcut for duplicating a layer. And then we'll change this layer blend mode from normal. We're going to go to screen. Remember, screen is the one that we use to lighten things with. So I'm going to hit Option Shift S, and that changes the blend mode to screen. Now, if you look at the before and after, I think the house is better, but what I really did was kind of wash out a lot of the color here. I think it got a little bit too bright in some of the other areas. So we'll just take our eraser tool once again and just start to erase back in a lot of those brighter areas here. And I don't have to be perfect with this. You're never going to see, as long as you use a lower opacity eraser, which I have, that 55% opacity, it's going to give you a very smooth blend. Okay? And that's looking pretty good. So let's take a look again. Before and then after. So I like that change, and I really like how the house stands out a lot more in this photo. All right, one more here. We've got lesson 9C. So this is a perfect example of a very nice photo, but I think we can do more to it. Okay, one of the things is I think the little girl, I don't want to say that she's in the shadows, but it just looks like she could be a little bit brighter. So I could also see how this photo could use a little bit more contrast as well. Well, let's duplicate the layer, Command or Control J. And what did we say those contrast enhancing blend modes were? Remember, they were overlay and soft light. So let's start off with soft light first. Okay, and that did a good job of enhancing the contrast here. Honestly, I think it made her a little bit too contrasty. So if we look at the after version here versus the before, I think she's a little bit too contrasty. So we'll just use that same trick. We'll take our eraser tool and we'll just paint over her face. That's going to be the main area, and maybe even a little bit on her hair here. Okay, and it's almost like putting a little bit of a spotlight on her because the layer underneath was a little bit brighter, if you recall. So let's take a look. Before and then after. So what looked like a really good photo, I'm telling you, a lot of times when you just duplicate that layer and change the blend mode over to soft light, you're going to get some really nice effects from it. It's one of the things that I'll do a lot to my photos, even if I think the original looks fine. And then if I change here, I'll experiment with overlay. All right, you can see the difference here. Remember how I said overlay was kind of a more punchier version of soft light. So there's soft light. and then there's overlay. For me personally, I kind of like soft light a little bit better. If it ever happens to be too much of the effect, you can always come up here and you can drop your opacity down. Because that's the benefit of using multiple layers for things like this, where we can take our opacity and we can reduce it, we can drop it down. Also, if it's ever not enough and you want to enhance the effect even more, try duplicating the layer again. Command J on the Mac or Control J on the PC. And you can see what it does is, especially when we erased, it still keeps those erased areas intact, but it's almost kind of giving double the effect that we had before. And once again, you can kind of get the best of both worlds here by dropping down the opacity if that second layer happens to be too much. So there you go, the 4 blend modes that we use the most: multiply, screen, soft light, and overlay. Give them a try on your photographs. If you ever see something that's a little bit too light, a little bit too dark, or maybe needs a little bit more contrast, blend modes are a great place to turn.